So here I am in Illustrator, and I'm just going to show you how to trace these cupcakes, and then we can duplicate them. So I have a blank document. It's a letter size page, and the first thing I'm going to do is just paste your picture in. I copied it from Canvas, and now I'm just going to hit Command V to paste it in. It's a really big picture, which is good. It means that the resolution is high. That's good. It just means we have to resize it. To resize a picture in Illustrator and constrain the proportions, which means to not stretch it or make it weird, you're going to need to hold Shift. So if you hold Shift, then the picture stays the same. I'm going to hit Undo, Command Z, or Control Z if you have a PC, just because another convenient thing that you could do is if you hold Shift and Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC, it'll actually resize in the center, which is just, a nice thing because it's constraining it towards the center. So then you don't have to resize it on the left and then the right. Anyway, so here's our picture, and I'm going to take the opacity down. Doing that makes it easier to see on top of it. And then I'm going to lock layer 1. This will make it so I don't accidentally move this picture around while I'm tracing. I'm going to go here to the layer panel. The plus is a new layer, and now I have layer 2, which is where I'm going to be tracing, and that's the red layer. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into this so that way we get a better view of it. And the convenient thing here is we only need to make one of these cupcakes. I'm going to do this one just because it's in the front. I'm going to get my pen tool. And the beginning of this is really just a trapezoid. Now we can't see the bottom of this cupcake, but I'm going to draw it as if we can. And I'm going to just make this shape. Okay, now I personally like to trace with a stroke on and no fill. And doing that, I think, just makes it easier to see, and then you can fix it afterwards. Okay, now I'm going to use the direct selection tool to move this up. And just like you can use the anchor point tool to change a corner point to a smooth point, I'm actually going to use it to curve this line like that. And we can also drag down this line like that. Okay. Now if we want, we can use the pen tool to get the ridges on the sorry, one second. We want to be adding to this. So this cupcake liner, right, it has these ridges on it. And it'd be nice if we could grab those. So I'm actually going to do this by hitting the plus on the keyboard. And we can just add all of these points. And I'm just going to add these points. I'm doing it pretty arbitrarily. You can do it nicer when you work on yours. The reason that came up is because I missed the line. So I'm going to just zoom in. And now we have all of these points. And I can move some of them up and just keep some of them where they are. And then we're going to end up with some ridges. Now again, as I said, I did mine pretty carelessly. I wasn't really paying attention. When you do this, you can do it nicer. When I make these videos, I prioritize speed over quality because I'm not making finished work. You are going to be making finished work, so you should prioritize niceness. Plus to get the plus pen tool, and then A to get the direct selection tool. There we go. Okay, and if I hit the black arrow, that's the regular selection tool. This is selected, and if I wanted, I could swap the fill and the stroke. There we go. Now something else we can do, I think, to make this tin look nicer is if we look here, let's select the shape, swap this. For every ridge, there is a line. Now we can just use the line tool. Now the line tool by default be nested under the rectangle tool, so you can find it under the rectangle tool. And there's no reason to use the pen tool to make a line, because you can just do it by dragging out these lines. Now if we want, we could be duplicating lines the same way that we're going to be duplicating other stuff. But I'm actually going to suggest against that, because the line keeps changing directions because of the perspective. And something else that I notice I'm doing that's bad is I'm tracing directly on the lines from the cupcake thing itself, but I wasn't loyal to that when I made my ridges, and you should be loyal to your ridges, not the original drawing. That's what's going to make it look better. So wherever you make your ridge, that's where these lines should be. Okay, so I'm just drawing these lines using the line tool. Eventually this will all be in black and white. I like to draw in pink because I think it's easy to see, and then I usually go back and change it. But let's see what this looks like. And remember, we're dealing with positive and negative space, so whatever color the cupcake tin is, the liner is, you'd want the cupcake line, like these lines, to be a different color, white, right? So if this is going to be black, these lines are going to be white. I'm selecting all of them now. I'm holding Shift. That lets me select more than one thing. By clicking them, and I'm still holding Shift. You can't see my hand on this recording, but I'm still holding Shift. And then I'm going to change the stroke to white. And then I'm going to make this, we could just fill it in pink. There we go. Now we have the cupcake liner. And I just want to show you, if we hit this arrow, we could see all of the sub layers on layer 2. This is underneath the lines. That's why we see the lines on top of it. Now, if I wanted to make the cupcake itself, that's probably the easiest part of this whole endeavor. We're just going to make an ellipse. So I'm going to make an ellipse. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be there. There we go. Now, this ellipse is fine. However, it's covering our ridges, and that's because it's on top. So I want to drag this ellipse underneath. And I also need to make a color differentiation between this cupcake and the liner, because otherwise we won't be able to see the difference. So we could make this white. Now it looks different. Conversely, we could make the cupcake black and the liner white, and then you'd make all of the lines black. It's just about having different colors. Okay, now we're going to want to make our frosting. And what I want to do here is actually just swap the stroke and the fill here, just so I can see underneath it. So I'm going to, you might have swatches, but let's just make it have no fill. And let's give it a stroke, and it doesn't matter what the color is. This is really just so I can see underneath it. Okay, now making the frosting might be a little complicated. I think what it's going to be is ultimately you're going to draw an outline shape of the whole blob of frosting, and then these will all be different lines which you can give it. So I'm going to, and this video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to just try to make this kind of quick, but I'm just going down and making a general outline of the frosting, not really being so careful and meticulous. Dragging is how you get the handles, and that's going to make it look more round. And the reason that I'm making a whole shape here is so that way you can fill it in. Because ultimately you're going to want to have the control of filling this shape in, so that way you can use it against the letter. Now I want to fix that handle, so I'm going to just bring that in. That is really pointy. Okay, now I would want to, I could use the pen tool, or I could actually use the paintbrush tool, which sometimes can be, I mean, the paintbrush tool is definitely a lot faster than the pen tool, but you have less control of it, and those lines are kind of ugly to me. I do not think they look very nice, and that's just because they're rounded. Well, they're just like really thick. We could try to change the setting of the paintbrush tool, and it might be worth doing just because it's so much faster than the pen tool. There, that's better, I think, actually. There we go. Undo. Okay, that's good. Now, what you could do also is, if you wanted to use, let's see what we can do here. It doesn't actually do anything with when you've used the paintbrush. I'm going to move these off. Not going to delete them. I'm just going to move them off, move them away. If we wanted to use the pen tool, which is definitely an option, you get a lot more control over the pen tool. So it has its benefits. If you hit the letter V, it'll end the line. P to get the pen tool. See, the brush was faster, but I do think the pen looks better. V to end the line. P to get the pen tool. And then something cool that you can do with this tool, and I'm going to stop here just because this video is already 11 minutes long. So I'm going to make this thicker, and then we could change the profile of the line. And that also looks pretty cool. Okay, so ultimately what we have here is we have our cupcake. This is going to be white. I'm going to take the stroke away. Does not need a stroke, especially not a purple one. These lines are also going to be white. That way they show up against the black frosting. This is going to be black with no stroke. There we go. And I guess this should also be black once we're making things black. Okay, so that's a cupcake. Once you have the cupcake, so that was the hard part. Once you have this cupcake once, then things get a lot easier because you just have to select the whole thing, and we can select the whole thing just by dragging it out. And then we can hold down, if you have a Mac, it's Option. If you have a PC, you're going to hold Alt. And if you hover over this cupcake with those with that modifier selected, you see how the arrows become doubled? You can drag out a second cupcake. Look at that. Now you have 2 cupcakes. You can drag out a third cupcake. We'd want the other ones to be behind. Something else you might want to do is to make it a little easier is you can group the cupcake. So I'm going to delete this one. Actually, I'm going undo. I'm going to delete this one. So you can hover over all of it, and then if you go to Object, and then you go to Group, it's at the top, Command G or Control G. Now this is a group, and you only have to hold it once, and then that just makes it so when you want to move them around, it's less confusing. So let's duplicate this. You want to let go of your cursor before you let go of the modifier. And then I just want to show you under these groups, that's where you have all of those paths, all of those lines and shapes. But there's still only 2 of these. Everything else is in subgroups. Okay, now if we wanted to put another one here, I just duplicate it again, and I'm just going to drag it underneath. And now you have a bunch of cupcakes. Something you could do, they don't all need to be exactly the same. You could make this one have white frosting. You could reverse it. Now to edit something inside a group, you have to double click on it, and you get inside the group. I'm going to make the white things black and the black things white. Something you can do here is go to select same, and let's go to stroke color. Okay, so that selected all of the things that were white strokes, and we're going to make them black. Great. And now we're going to make the black things white and the white thing black. And now when we want to leave this, we can go like that. Okay, and then we can do that. And that's just something that's worth thinking about, having differences. It's not really necessary. It's just something you can think about. And also, I do realize that I cut the sprinkles out. You can totally keep those in. I think they're really fun, and they would add something to it. I skipped it for speed. You can make sprinkles pretty easily with the ellipse tool. You would just draw out white circles, and that's how you'd get those sprinkles. Just as a note. Anyway, that's how you would make the cupcakes, but importantly, that's how you duplicate the cupcakes. You only need to make one cupcake, holding down Option or Alt, let go of your cursor, and then you let go of the modifier. Okay, let me know if you have any questions on this. I know it's a lot of information.